The desert wind carried heat and silence over the small frontier town of Red Hill. It was the kind of place most people forgot: buildings made of metal and wood, slow-moving folks, and long, empty roads. Time moved different here. Nothing. Much changed. That's why the people noticed him right away. He came from the west, riding an old hoverbike that sputtered and sparked like it hadn't been serviced in years. His coat was long and dusty, his boots heavy with sand. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, tilted just enough to shade his eyes. No one knew his name. He didn't speak much. Just rode in slow and calm, like he belonged. Most people called him the Drifter. But Mira noticed something the others didn't. She worked in her father's repair shop, fixing machines, bikes, and the occasional farming drone. She was good with wires, better with engines, and always curious. When the Drifter's hoverbike gave out just outside town, he wheeled it in and asked if someone could take a look. Mira was under the belly of a delivery truck when he walked in. "You fix rides?" he asked, voice low. She rolled out, squinting up at him. He looked older than most, maybe in his 30s, face rough with stubble and sun. His eyes were dark, calm, and sharp like someone who'd seen more than he said. "Depends," she said. "What's wrong?" "Don't know. Won't hold lift. Keeps pulling left." "Bring it around back," she replied. He nodded and pushed the broken bike behind the shop. Mira followed with her toolkit. Her father was away, and the shop was quiet, so she had time. As she opened the panels on the bike's side, her hands paused. This wasn't just any hover bike. The parts inside were ... advanced. Some tech she hadn't seen before. Not military, not farming grade. Smooth silver parts that reacted fast to her tools. There were shielding lines running through the frame, and a gravity modulator tucked beneath old metal plates. She looked up at the man. "Where'd you get this?" "Trade," he said simply. "This is alien tech," she whispered. He didn't. Answer just stood there, watching her with the same unreadable face. Mira didn't push. Instead, she got to work. For the next hour, they barely spoke. She fixed the gravity unit and tuned the stabilizer. The whole time, the Drifter stood nearby, quiet and still, like he didn't belong to the world around him. Finally, the hoverbike floated smoothly again. "Should ride better now," she said. Brushing dust from her hands, "Thanks," he said, reaching into his coat. He pulled out a few credits more than the repair was worth and handed them to her. "This is too much," Mira said. "Keep it." She watched him turn to leave. "Wait," she called. "What's your name?" He paused, then looked back. Over his shoulder. "Luke." And then he was gone just like that. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the strange tech, his quiet voice, and the way he watched everything like he was waiting for something to happen. Out in the distance, strange lights flickered in the sky again. For weeks, people in Red Hill had seen them. White-blue flashes over the desert, sometimes moving too fast, sometimes just floating. The mayor said it was weather. Others said it was smugglers. Myra had her doubts. She decided to follow him the next day. Just before sundown, she closed the shop early and took her dirt skimmer out of town. She kept a long distance, watching for his trail. The desert stretched, wide and empty, with sharp red rocks and old fences buried in sand. Eventually, she saw his bike in the distance, parked near a canyon wall. Mira stopped her skimmer and walked the rest of the way on foot, staying low behind rocks. That's when she saw it. Luke was standing in front of a metal panel half buried in stone. It was big, rectangular, and old. Lights blinked across its surface. He pressed his hand against a scanner, and the door slid open, revealing a long, dim tunnel that led underground. He stepped inside. Mira waited a few minutes, then followed, her heart racing. Inside, the tunnel was cool and silent. She crept forward, trying not to make a sound. Blue lights lined the walls. Strange markings of lean or ancient glowed softly. Then she saw him again, standing in front of what looked like a large control room. Screens, controls, a map of the entire desert glowing in light. He spoke softly, to no one, Still here after all this time. Mira accidentally stepped on a loose rock. It echoed. Luke turned sharply. "Who's there?" Mira stepped out, hands raised. "It's me." "From the shop?" He didn't look angry, just tied. "You followed me?" "I had to. I saw the tech on your bike, and now this." "What is this place?" Luke looked around the room, then back at her. "This used to be a command outpost, human-made, but upgraded. With help? Help from who? Friends? From off-world?" She stared at him. "So, you're not a normal drifter, are you?" "No." "Then what are you?" He looked down, then out the doorway. "I'm someone who saw too much, lost too much, and walked away from all of it." There was silence. Finally, Mira said, "So why are you back?" He didn't answer, but something in the air changed. A low rumble far in the distance. The kind that came before a storm or something worse. Luke looked up, eyes sharp again. "They're coming," he said softly. Mira swallowed hard. "Who?" He looked at her. "The ones who never forgot Earth." Mira stood frozen, the quiet hum of the old command room surrounding her like a ghost from the past. The walls still pulsed with weak blue light. The dusty air smelled like old metal and forgotten battles. Luke stared at the blinking desert map in front of him. Tiny red dots moved slowly across the screen. "They're scouts," he said. "Grenth ships. 2 of them, maybe more. They're looking for something buried here." Mira stepped forward. "What are the Grenth?" Luke didn't look at her. "They're not from this system. Cold-blooded raiders. Took 100 colonies before we pushed them back. It was years ago. I didn't think they'd ever return." Mira glanced at the screen. "Why Red Hill?" "There's something under this region," Luke said. "Something old, something powerful. I hoped it was buried deep enough they'd never find it." Mira pointed at the map. "And this place, this outpost. You said it's human-made?" Luke nodded. "Long ago, after the Earth Alliance formed. This was one of the early defense stations during the Outer Reach War. It was upgraded with alien tech when our allies joined." "You fought in that war?" "You don't look like a soldier." "I don't want to be one anymore," he said softly. The silence between them grew thick. Mira looked around the room, amazed. The walls had symbols and switches she didn't understand. There was a large chair at the center, shaped like a command seat, with faded leather and dust. The place felt old, but still alive. "How long has this been here?" she asked. "Since before you were born," Luke replied. "It was sealed after the war. I stayed behind to watch over it." Mira stared at him. "You stayed here all this time? Watching?" "No, I left for a while. Tried to forget. Tried to live like a normal man." He looked down. "But the desert doesn't forget." Mira walked closer to the console. "What are they really looking for?" Luke sighed. "A vault. Deep beneath the desert. It holds one of the last plasma cores, a weapon core strong enough to power a fleet. If they get it, they can take Earth again. Maybe worse." Mira felt a chill crawl up her spine. "So what are we going to do?" Luke finally turned toward her. His eyes looked tired but focused. "We have to find the vault before they do." The next morning, the sun rose red and sharp over Red Hill. Life in town moved slow, like always. Kids played in the dusty streets, traders loaded carts, and old folks sat on porches sipping hot drinks. No one knew the danger coming their way. Mira returned to the repair shop, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about what she saw about Luke, the underground station, and the glowing map. She kept hearing his words. "They're coming." Her father noticed her quiet mood. "Everything all right?" he asked while tuning a grain thresher engine. "Yeah," she lied. "Just tired." But her eyes kept scanning the sky. Later that evening, Mira met Luke again near the canyon. He wore the same dusty coat and hat, but this time he carried a small case. Inside it were 2 old datapads, maps, and a device that looked like a scanner. "We'll start here," he said, showing her the map. The vault was hidden under the ridge, but the entrance collapsed years ago. There may be a second route. "What do you need me for?" Mira asked. You know machines? I need help unlocking the path and I don't trust anyone else. Mira gave a small smile. All right then. They loaded the gear onto her dirt skimmer and drove out into the rocky hills. The wind whipped past them, and the sky slowly turned orange as the sun dropped low. After half an hour, they reached a deep rock valley where the scanner started blinking. This is the place, Luke said. Together, they climbed. Down the slope. Mira found a thick metal plate buried in the ground. She wiped dust off the surface. A control panel was set to the side, half dead from time and heat. Give me a minute, she said. She opened the panel and got to work, fingers dancing across wires. Sparks flew. The scanner beeped again. Then with a heavy sound, the ground shook. A large stone slid back, revealing a tunnel with steps going deep into the earth. Luke handed her a light stick. Stay close. They entered slowly. The air was cold and dry. Metal walls turned to stone, then back to metal again, like the place had been rebuilt many times. After some walking, they reached a sealed vault door. Mira stepped forward. This must be it. Luke nodded. The plasma core is inside. We have to secure it before the Grenth come. He pressed his hand to the scanner beside the door. The machine paused, scanned him. Then beeped green. The door hissed and opened. Inside was a long chamber filled with old tech, crates, and one glowing object tround, floating slightly above a platform. The plasma core, it shined bright blue, humming with power. Mira stared. Beautiful, it's dangerous, Luke said. In the wrong hands, it can level a city in seconds. She looked at him. Why don't we destroy it? He shook his head. If they think it's gone, they'll tear apart every inch of the land. But if we move it somewhere they can't follow, she understood. We trick them. He gave her a nod. Exactly. Suddenly, the scanner beeped again. But not from the vault. Luke turned sharply. They're here. Back on the surface, ships moved fast through the sky dark, silent and sharp-edged. The Grenth had arrived, but Luke had expected this. He turned to Mira. We need to move fast. Help me secure the core. Together, they lifted the glowing object into a shielded crate. Luke tapped in a command. The crate sealed tight and floated behind them on a low hover disc as they exited the vault. Mira looked back once. Do you think they'll stop? No, Luke said. They don't stop. He looked out over the desert. The first Grenth ship was already landing near the horizon. Dust and light rose into the air. Myra swallowed hard. And what now? Luke stared at the sky, jaw set. Now, we fight. The air over Red Hill was thick and still. Clouds gathered low, hiding the sky. But this wasn't a natural storm. It was the calm before something much worse. High above the hills, dark Grenth ships moved silently, like shadows gliding. Across the wind, their sharp wings reflected no sunlight. From far away, they looked like birds. But Mira knew better now. They weren't birds. They were hunters. Luke and Mira had returned to town just before nightfall. They hid the plasma core in one of Luke's underground depots, places no one in Red Hill even knew existed. Beneath an old grain warehouse, hidden behind a sliding floor panel, Luke stored high-tech supplies, weapons, and scanners left over from the war. Myra couldn't believe how much gear he had. Why do you have all this? She asked, standing beside racks of silent drones and dusty crates. I didn't plan to use them again, Luke said. But I kept them, in case. In case what? In case the war followed me home. He powered up one of the surveillance screens. A few drones were still active in the desert. Their small cameras showed flashes of movement. Grenth scouts had landed 20 miles out, near the rocky cliffs. They'll come closer, he said. Mira crossed her arms. You think they'll hit Red Hill? Luke looked at her. They don't care about towns, but they care about what's under them. They'll burn everything above to get it. The next morning, strange sounds echoed over Red Hill. Deep hums, soft pulses, like engines, but not from anything local. People stepped out of their homes, looking up, and one child pointed to the sky. Papa, what's that? 3 ships passed overhead, low and slow. Not fast like military jets, not loud like trade haulers. These moved like they were scanning. By noon, one of the mining outposts, northeast of town, stopped responding. No signals. Gone. The mayor of Red Hill, an older man named Jonas, called an emergency meeting in the town square. People gathered, murmuring in fear. Mira stood near the back, beside Luke, who kept his hat low and his coat tight. Jonas raised his hands. We've all seen them. We don't know who they are or what they want, but they've already taken. Ridgepost, that's just 15 miles away, people shouted. They're aliens. Do we have weapons? Should we run? Jonas tried to calm the crowd. Now hold on. We don't panic. We're peaceful folks. Maybe we can talk to them. Maybe no, Luke said, stepping forward. The crowd turned. Jonas narrowed his eyes. And you are? Luke looked up. Someone who's fought them before. Whispers spread through the crowd. They're not here to talk, Luke continued. They're here to dig, to burn, to take what they want and leave ash behind. Jonas laughed nervously. You don't even live here. What makes you think? I've seen what they do, Luke said. They'll scan every hill, every town. If they think something valuable is under us, they'll wipe Red Hill off the map. Silence followed. A young man stepped forward. So what do we do? Luke turned to the crowd. You have a choice. Stay and defend this land, or run and hope. They don't chase you. Mira watched the faces in the crowd. Fear, confusion, but slowly. Something else appeared. Strength, pride. This was their home. Their land? Jonas finally sighed. All right. What do you suggest? Luke looked at Mira, then back at the crowd. We fight. That night, Luke opened his depot fully. He handed out old weapon-stun rifles, ion shields, and defense drones. Mira helped fix damaged gear and showed the townspeople how to use the tech. I never thought I'd hold something like this, said one of the farmers, turning a plasma cutter in his hands. Just point and press, Mira said, smiling slightly. Don't press twice unless you want a hole in the ground. They all laughed, but it was nervous laughter. In just hours, Red Hill turned from a sleepy town to a hidden stronghold. Luke placed scanners at the edge of the desert. These will give us a 5-minute warning if they get close. Is that enough time? Mira asked. No, he said, but it's better than nothing. By the next morning, the Grenth returned. 2 scout ships flew low over the ridge. One fired a beam into the canyon wall, scanning for underground tech. The town stayed quiet, hidden, but then a mistake happened. A child, curious and scared, peeked out from a rooftop with a small scope. The ship saw movement. Within seconds, the Grenth fired a warning shot. A blast of red light hit the edge of town, tearing apart a fence and part of a storage shed. Screams rang out. Luke shouted, "Everyone to cover. Now." The defense drones powered up and flew into the air, forming a shield line. Luke ran toward the edge of town, firing his plasma pistol at the ship's wing. Sparks flew, and the Grenth scout twisted away. Let's see if you remember Earthspite, he muttered. More townspeople joined the fight. Mira helped guide the defense bots from a tablet. They moved fast, attacking in packs and pushing the enemy ships back. The Grenth hadn't expected resistance. After 10 long minutes, the 2 scouts retreated. Red Hill had survived for now, but Luke knew what was coming next. They'll send more, he told Mira. Stronger ships, ground teams, maybe worse. She looked at him. Then we hold them off again. He shook his head. We need a better plan. Mira thought for a moment. You said you owned land across the state, right? Yes. Then maybe it's time we use all of it. Luke smiled for the first time in days. You thinking what I'm thinking? She nodded. Let's lead them somewhere else. Somewhere empty. Control the battlefield. He nodded slowly, because if they want war... He placed his hand on the old Earth resistance badge still hidden inside his coat. We'll give them one. The next morning brought a strange silence to Red Hill. The air was heavy, like it knew another storm was coming. But the people moved with purpose. After facing the Grenth and surviving, something had changed inside them. They were no longer just farmers, mechanics, or shopkeepers. They were defenders now, and Luke was no longer a stranger. Inside the old grain warehouse, now turned into a planning base. Myra stood beside a table covered in maps and holoscanners. She was tuning a set of signal jammers when Luke walked in, carrying an old metal case. "What's in there?" she asked. Luke placed the case on the table and opened it. Inside was a small silver cube, glowing softly, and an old badge earth, resistance colors. "That's your unit badge?" Mira asked quietly. Luke nodded. "We called ourselves Storm Trail. We weren't the strongest, but we were smart. We fought across moons, stations, even gas fields in orbit. I was just a scout when it all started. By the end, I was in charge of 15. Myra listened silently. She had never heard him talk this much about his past. "I lost all of them," he said, voice low. "Every single one. We were trying to hold a colony near the outer rim. The Grenth came in fast with fire and bombs. We held for 5 days. Then the last defense dome cracked." He paused. "I made it out. Barely. They didn't." Mira touched the badge gently. "That's why you came here." Luke nodded. "Yeah, I wanted to disappear. Live quiet. I bought land with the reward credits, most of it desert. Worthless, they said. But I buried defense systems, power cells, hidden bunkers across it. I never planned to fight again. But I couldn't let go completely." She looked at him in the core. "Why didn't you turn it over?" He gave a sad smile, "Because I didn't trust anyone with it. Not even the Alliance. Power like that needs to be hidden, not used." Mira nodded slowly. "I understand." Later that day, Luke and Mira took 2 skimmers and rowed out toward the northern plateau, an empty stretch of land covered in sand and broken stone. It was far from Red Hill, but still inside Luke's property zone. "If we bring the Grenth here," Mira said, "we can set traps. Lure them away from town." Luke agreed. "There's a power node buried out here. One of the last defense towers still online. If we activate it, it'll send out a false energy signal." "Like bait," Mira said. "Exactly." They reached a small hill marked by an old rusted flag. Luke knelt and pressed a code into a hidden keypad buried in the sand. A panel opened, revealing stairs going down. Inside was a small control room, dusty, but alive. "This tower has shield generators and an old fusion rail," Luke said. "Not much, but enough to hurt." Together, they powered up the tower and activated the signal beacon. A soft hum filled the air. "Now we wait," Luke said, back in Red Hill. The town prepared for evacuation, just in case. Jonas, the mayor, stood on a truck and gave orders. "All children, elders, and families without weapons head east. Use the old trade route. Now we've cleared the way. Myra's uncle will guide you to shelter." The people moved quickly but calmly. There was no panic now. It's quiet strength. Mira stayed behind. So did about 20 others. Farmers, mechanics, hunters, ordinary people who had made their choice. They would defend their land. That evening, Myra sat on the rooftop of the repair shop, watching the sunset. The sky was orange and gold, with streaks of red across the clouds. It looked peaceful. Luke joined her, carrying 2 cups of hot brew. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. She took it, smiled softly. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a while. "Why haven't you ever left?" Mira asked. "You could have gone anywhere?" Luke sipped his drink. "'Cause this is home. Not just the land, but the feeling, the quiet, the stars. After the war, I didn't want to see more steel and skyships. I wanted to feel the ground under my feet again, and the people." He looked at her. "It reminded me of what I fought for." Mira glanced at him. "You really haven't loved in years, have you?" He looked out at the desert. "No, I couldn't. I felt like if I let someone in, I'd lose them too." She didn't speak for a moment, but now, Luke looked at her. "Now, I'm not so sure." Their eyes met briefly. Then Mira stood. "Let's make sure Red Hill is still here tomorrow." The next morning, the sky turned dark early. Luke's signal beacon had worked. 6 Grenth ships moved toward the northern plateau, scanners glowing, weapons armed. From the cliffs, Luke watched through a scope. They took the bait. Mira stood beside him. Then we better be ready. As the ships entered the valley, Luke pressed a control button. The defense tower powered up. Hidden turrets rose from the ground. Drones, buried under false rocks, activated. The trap was set. The first explosion shook the ground. A Grenth ship was hit by a fusion blast from the tower and crashed into the canyon wall. 2 others opened fire, but the tower's shields held. Luke's drones flew in, hitting them from behind. Mira coordinated the drone movements from her tablet. Left side, send 2 toward the rear thruster. The Grenth fought back hard. Strange alien bots dropped from the ships, spider-like machines with glowing red eyes. Luke drew his plasma pistol and fired, knocking one back. They were outnumbered. But not OU2 Matt. His battlefield, his prap. After nearly an hour of battle, 3 Grenth ships were destroyed. The others were damaged and forced to retreat. Luke breathed hard, wiping dust from his face. That's one fight. Mira looked at him. They'll come again. He nodded, and we'll be ready. For now, Red Hill was safe, but the war wasn't over. Not yet. Smoke still rose from the northern plateau. The burnt shells of Grenth ships lay scattered across the rocks, glowing faintly under the sun. Birds circled above, cautious of the strange metal. Insects had already returned, crawling over dust and ashdot. Mira stood on a high ridge, her hair blowing in the wind, tablet in hand. She scanned the wreckage one last time, as the drones had returned to base. A few had been lost, but it was a fair trade. They had one. Luke joined her, carrying a scoped rifle across his back. His face was calm, but his eyes remained sharp. They didn't expect humans to fight back like that, he said. They won't make that mistake again, Mira replied. Luke nodded, which means the next wave will be worse. Back in Red Hill, the townspeople gathered in the square. There was no cheering, no celebration, just quiet talk and steady hands. Everyone knew this was only the beginning. Jonas, the mayor, walked up to Luke and Mira. We've done what we can here, but word is spreading. Other towns are hearing about Red Hill's stand. Some want to help. Others want to run. Luke looked at him. Tell them to hide, to move families. But we need fighters, people who know the land. Jonas nodded. There's an old signal tower near Dust Point. You can send a message to the nearby towns. Good, Luke said. Do it. Mira turned to him. What now? Luke looked at the sky. Now we go underground. That evening, Mira followed Luke into one of his oldest bunkers deep, beneath a broken windmill just outside Red Hill. The place was larger than she expected. Metal doors opened into long halls. Walls lined with equipment. Old weapons, maps, and sealed crates filled the space. What is this place? Mira asked. This was our fallback site, Luke said. Back in the war, if things went wrong, this was where we would regroup. Mira walked over to a large table with a cracked glass top. Beneath it was a full map of the state marked with blinking dots. These are all your locations? She asked. Storage bunkers. Watchtowers. Some are still working, others offline. She pointed to one. What's this near Stone Ridge? Luke paused. That's a power relay. Still active. If we can connect it to the vault where the plasma core is hidden, we can move it. Myra's eyes widened. Move the core? He nodded. To a safer spot. Deeper underground. Somewhere the Grenth will never reach. But won't the power draw alert them? Yes, he said. Which is why we'll do it during their next attack. She stared at him. That's risky, I know, he said. But it's our only chance. The next morning, Luke rode out to the southern ridge, where one of his storage sites was buried beneath a dried lake bed. He wore his long coat, hat pulled low, a small radio clipped to his belt. Myra followed close behind on her skimmer. They reached the site by noon. Luke opened a hatch hidden under a fake rock. Inside were 6 old drones, larger than the ones used before. These were battle grade. Mira's eyes lit up. Those are a 9 South, Luke said. They were banned after the war. Too smart, too fast, but they still work. Can we control them? Only with direct links. You'll guide 3. I'll take the other 3. Mira hesitated. You trust me with this? Luke looked at her. I do. She nodded. Then let's do it. That night, the Grenth returned. 3 large ships hovered over Red Hill's skies. This time, they didn't scan or wait. They opened fire. Red beams lit up the night, hitting fields, roads, and empty buildings. Explosions rocked the town as defense. Drones rose into the sky once again. Luke stood on the rooftop of the old sheriff's building, guiding his RA-9 drones with calm precision. They flew fast, attacking the Grenth from behind, cutting through their shielding with advanced weapons. Myra was inside the town hall, fingers flying across her control pad. Her drones danced between buildings, firing at the legs of spider bots that had dropped from the ships. Left side, drone, rotate, and fire, she called out. One of the drones shot a direct blast at a Grenth walker, knocking it backward. Townspeople on foot followed with ion rifles, shooting at the downed. Luke's voice came through the radio. Keep the north line steady. We're holding them, but barely. Mira gritted her teeth. We need to move the core now. While they're busy, Luke replied, Go. I'll handle things here. Mira took a small group and raced to the hidden vault on the edge of town. She entered the passcode and led them down into the chamber. The plasma core still floated gently above the platform, glowing with soft blue light. Careful, she said. Lower it into the transfer unit. 2 men lifted the crate and guided it into a shielded carrier. The machine hummed to life. Power. Relay ready, one of them said. Start the link, Mira ordered. The carrier floated toward the hidden tunnel, sliding onto a rail system connected to the Stone Ridge relay. If the connection held, it would reach the deeper chamber in just under an hour. Move fast, Mira said. They'll detect the energy pulse soon. Above, the sky battle grew worse. One Grenth ship exploded in midair, but another dropped. Heavy tanks into the south fields. Fire spread as the land turned into a battlefield. Luke fired his plasma rifle at a spider bot, crawling toward the school building. Stay down. He shouted to a group of kids hiding behind a wall, his RA-9. Drones circled back. New wave incoming, he muttered. Come on, Mira. Hurry. Inside the relay tunnel, Mira ran beside the floating core. Sweat covered her face, and her hands trembled slightly as she checked the scanner. We're halfway there, one of her team said. Suddenly the tunnel lights flickered. They've detected it, Mira yelled. Increase power to the shield. Core glowed brighter, but the shield held. The rail system kept moving. Almost there, she whispered, back on the surface. Luke received the message. Core relocation. Successful. He smiled slightly and turned toward the last Grenth ship still. In the air he raised his rifle. For Earth, he whispered. The sky was filled with smoke and fire. Buildings burned in the distance. Fields that once grew crops were now black and broken. Red Hill had changed. The quiet desert town was now a war zone, but it was still standing. The townspeople, tired and bruised, had fought harder than anyone expected. Drones were down and many buildings were damaged, but they had done the impossible. They had survived the second wave, and most importantly, the plasma core was gone, safe, buried. Deep underground where the Grenth would never find it, inside the old sheriff's building. Mira sat against the wall, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her clothes were dusty, her face streaked with sweat and smoke. She had been awake for nearly 2 days. But her eyes were still sharp, still thinking. Luke stood at the window, watching the broken sky. His coat was torn, his hat gone, dirt covered. His boots and blood stained the edge of his sleeve, but he didn't seem to notice. The last ship's gone, he said. They're pulling back. Mira didn't reply. Luke turned to her. You did it? No, she said softly. We all did. There was a pause. Only the distant sound of fire crackling broke the silence. Then Mira asked, Why do you keep pushing yourself like this? Luke leaned against the wall beside her. Because I've already lost too much. And if I stop now, I'll lose again. Carry too much, she said. He looked at her. So do you. Mira smiled a little. Yeah, I guess we both do. Later. That evening, Myra walked alone through the center of Red Hill. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the ground. People were starting to clean the damage. Hoses sprayed water onto smoldering wood. Drones helped clear rubble. Children peeked from windows. Life was slowly returning, but Mira's heart felt heavy. Too many close calls. Too many moments where it all could have ended. One question kept circling in her mind. What happens now? She found Luke near the edge of town, standing beside his old hoverbike. He was tightening a fuel line, eyes focused, hands steady, but she could tell he was thinking too. "You leaving?" she asked. Luke looked up. "Just fixing what's broken." "Seems like you've spent your whole life doing that," Mira said. "Fixing broken things, fighting lost causes." He nodded. "Maybe." She stepped closer. "But when do you stop running from the past?" Luke sighed. "I'm not running. I've just been trying not to feel too much. It's easier that way." Mira looked down. "That's what I thought too. Until I met you." He raised an eyebrow. She smiled. "Or the quiet cowboy who looked like he didn't care. But now, I know better." Luke looked into her eyes, silent for a moment. Then he said something she never expected. "I used to love someone. During the war, her name was Ellen. She was strong, smart, fearless. We fought together, led missions together. She died saving others. I watched it happen." Myra felt her breath catch. "I blamed myself," he continued. "I shut everything down. I left the fight. Left everything because I didn't want to feel that pain again." Mira's voice was quiet. "You still carry it?" "I do," Luke said. "But being here, seeing what you did, how you fought, how you cared, ... it reminded me of something." "What?" "That not all battles are lost." They stood in silence. Then Mira reached out and touched his hand. Luke didn't pull away. That night, a soft wind blew over Red Hill. The stars returned, twinkling over the quiet rooftops. Fires were out. Lights flickered in homes. People slept, but not Luke. He was in the underground depot again, looking at an old screen. A message had arrived. From the Outer Defense Network, incoming Fleet Grenth mothership detected. The next morning, Luke gathered everyone in the town square. His face was calm, but serious. "They're sending their main ship now," he said. "A Grenth mothership. Bigger than anything we've faced. If it lands near Red Hill, we won't survive." People muttered. Fear returned. Mira stepped forward, but we moved the core. "There's nothing left here." "They don't care," Luke replied. "They think it's still here, and they want to make sure." Jonas, the mayor, spoke up. "What do we do?" Luke took a breath. "We lead them away. We make them chase us. Then we destroy the ship." People stared. Mira nodded. "You have a plan." Luke walked over to the map on the wall. "There's a canyon 3 hours west. Narrow, rocky, deep. Old military traps are still buried their automated guns, mines, even seismic charges. We lure the ship into the canyon, trap it, and bring it down." Jonas scratched his beard. "That's suicide," maybe, Luke said. "But it's the only way to end this." The crowd was quiet, and one by one heads nodded. "If you're leading," Jonas said, "we'll follow." As the town prepared, Mira and Luke stood alone by the gate. "You sure about this?" she asked. Luke nodded. "We end it now. For good." Mira looked into his eyes. "You've changed, you know. So have you." She stepped closer. "After this, what then?" Luke took her hand gently. "Then I stop running. And maybe I finally stay." The plan was simple, but dangerous. They would use a powered decoy to mimic the plasma core's signal. Mounted on Luke's hoverbike, it would fly ahead and draw the mothership toward the canyon. Defense units would wait at the cliffs, hidden. Once the ship entered, charges would be triggered, but someone had to ride the bike. Someone had to lead the Granthan. Luke volunteered without hesitation. Mira tried to argue. "Let someone else do it." "You've done enough." Luke smiled softly. "I started this. I finish it." She looked away. "What if you don't make it back?" He touched her cheek. "Then remember, I didn't run this time. Mira's voice trembled. No, you're not alone anymore, Luke. He nodded. I know. And as the wind picked up, as the sun rose higher, Luke climbed onto the hoverbike once, more dusty scarred. Steady, the same drifter who had once rolled into Red Hill alone. But now he wasn't alone anymore. The wind rushed across the open plains as Luke sped west on his hoverbike, the sun rising behind him. Dust kicked up in long trails. On his back, secured with metal straps, was the decoy and energy device sending out a signal that matched the plasma core. From high above, the Grenth mothership tracked the signal. The giant ship floated in the sky like a moving mountain. It was shaped like a black dagger, silent and dangerous. They were following him just as planned. Back in Red Hill, Mira stood beside the rest of the town, watching the distant sky. Her heart pounded. Every second that passed felt like a full minute. Jonas came up beside her. He'll make it. Mira didn't answer. She just stared west. Far across the desert, beyond the hills, the trap was set. The ravine of stones at Deep Canyon with ancient defense systems buried along its walls, systems Luke had hidden and repaired in secret over the years. It was the last place the Grenth would expect to die, inside the canyon. Hidden in the cliffs, Mira's team waited. Old plasma cannons were armed. Drones were locked in position. Seismic charges were buried under the canyon floor, all waiting for the signal. Luke guided the hoverbike carefully through the narrow path between the rocks. Behind him, the shadow of the mothership grew larger. The massive ship dipped lower, now fully focused on him. Smaller ships flew ahead, scanning for the core. Luke smirked. You're too late, he whispered. He pressed a button on his wrist. The fake core increased in brightness. Pulling their sensors deeper into the trap, the ship entered the canyon, just as planned. Mira saw the red flare in the sky. The signal, he's inside. She said the team activated the defenses. Canyon walls lit up with hidden lights. Plasma cannons powered up. Drones took flight, surrounding the canyon rim. Hidden mines came online, ready to explode. And then the first shot fired. One of the drones hit the mothership's left side. Sparks flew. The giant ship slowed, surprised then. The sky filled with noise. More drones swarmed. Lasers flashed. Explosions echoed between the cliffs. The battle had begun. Luke kept riding, leading the mothership deeper. He dodged falling rocks and flying bots. A blast shot past his bike, missing by inches. Heat scorched his coat, but he didn't stop. He looked down at the controller on his wrist. Almost there. Come on, he whispered. Just a little more. Behind him, the ship turned. Its lower cannons opened, but then it was too late. Luke reached the far end of the canyon and jumped off the hoverbike. It crashed into a rock and exploded, throwing fire into the sky. The Grenth mothership slowed. That's when Mira pressed the final button. The canyon erupted. Seismic charges blew from beneath the sand. Huge stones collapsed from the walls. Fired everything they had. The mothership shook, metal ripping. Fire spread across its wings. The power core inside began to fail. And then, with a sound like thunder across the world, the mothership crashed. Half buried in the canyon floor, flames bursting from its engines. The mighty ship fell. Smoke rose. Metal twisted. Silence returned. Mira ran into the canyon, heart pounding. Luke, where are you? She searched the smoke, the rocks, the wreckage. Then she saw him limping, covered in dirt, but alive. He leaned on a broken pipe, one hand on his side. Didn't run, she said, rushing to him. I told you I wouldn't, he said, smiling through pain. She helped him stand. You're hurt, just a scratch. You call that a scratch? Luke laughed softly. Okay, maybe a big scratch. She looked at him. You did it? He nodded. No, we did it. 2 days later, Red Hill was quiet again. The sun was warm, the sky was clear, the ships were gone. The enemy defeated. Word spread quickly. Red Hill, the small desert town, had brought down a Grenth mothership. Other colonies started to speak with pride again. People who had been afraid began to believe. Across the region, humans remembered Something important. They were not weak. They were not broken. They were fighters. Luke stood at the edge of his land, looking out at the open plains. The wind blew gently through the grass. His coat was clean now, his wounds healing. Myra walked up beside him. "You thinking of leaving again?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, I'm done running. This is my place." She smiled. "Good." Stood quietly for a moment. "You still own half the state?" she asked playfully. He chuckled. "Something like that. And now?" He looked at her. "Now I share it with someone I trust." She met his eyes. He never said it. "Said what?" She stepped closer. "That you care?" Luke paused, then smiled. "I care, Mira." Her eyes softened. "I care too," she said. And as the sun set over Red Hill, two figures stood side by side. A drifter cowboy with a soldier's past, a fearless young woman with a mechanic's hands, and a town that refused to fall. Their story had started with silence and secrets, but it ended with courage, fire, and a new beginning. The end.